Perfect. So my name is Ben Chesser. I'm the CEO and founder of Coniq. Coniq is the leading provider for CRM, loyalty and engagement systems specifically for shopping malls. I think the best way to explain what we've done is I call the journey from Box Park to Bista. So 5 years ago we started with a small company doing a loyalty program for Box Park, which was a bunch of shipping containers in East London. Probably shouldn't say that, but that's what it is. And then very quickly we went into a shopping centre called Bista Village, which was a very different experience. And now we work with Unibuy, Redevco, Multi, Value Retail, Via, 9var, many of the top players in Europe. We're solving the same problem. We're always helping them understand who their shoppers are, how much they spend, how often they come, exactly where they spend their money. And I think for us the future then is to move from that, which is rewarding good behaviour, to predicting good behaviour and driving into a kind of a much more predictive, customer-friendly model. So
I'm for CBRE. So hopefully you know what CBRE is. We're the world's biggest real estate services company. I look after retail research with a particular focus on innovation and what's going to happen in the future. So there's a lot of standard data out there in terms of rents or yields or growth, that sort of thing. But I'm really focused on, I guess, how consumers will impact real estate and how real estate impacts the way customers behave.
Great, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Markowitz-Shulman. I'm the Director of Strategy and Business Development for Dropit, based in London. Dropit is a digital hands-free shopping solution for malls and central shopping districts. And what that means, for example, where we operate today with 100 stores across the West End, is that you can go into any Dropit partner store, leave your shopping at the till, and then all of your shopping will be delivered to your home or to your hotel later that day in London or next day nationwide. Now, this is a great way to enhance the consumer experience. It lets people spend more money, spend more time on site, and by facilitating this service in a digital way, we also take the best of what's available in e-commerce to the physical world by allowing property owners and retailers to learn and understand the customer journey from start to finish and to meet and find new ways to communicate with those customers.
Great, Willem.
Hi everyone, my name is Willem Buijs. I'm co-founder of Chainels. We're a Dutch company based in Rotterdam. Chainels is a community platform, a business-to-business community platform for shopping areas. We work for high streets, inner cities and shopping centers. And what we basically do is we connect all the stakeholders in these areas, so shopping center management, all the retailers, marketeers, security agencies, and they all communicate and collaborate on all types of topics. So they talk about safety, about marketing, about maintenance, and we make sure that everyone, each stakeholder is very engaged, that information is very accessible, and that everything, the whole workflow within these shopping centers and high streets is very efficient. We currently do this for around 75 to 80 different areas, mainly in Holland, a couple of them in Belgium. And we work for big cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam, but also for Wereldhave, CBRE, and together with a lot of property management organizations.
Great, Omaid.
Hello, I'm Omaid Hiwaizi. I'm the Global Head of Experience Strategy at Blippar. We are a technology company leading the way with artificial intelligence and augmented reality. Using our technology, people can hold up their phone and tablet to a brand or an everyday object or an environment, and our technology will add a digital layer to what they're looking at. So our vision is to give people more from everything they can see in the world using that kind of technology. My particular interest in being here is to do with our applications in shopper marketing and retail marketing. And that's all about helping shoppers navigate to and around stores. And then when they're at fixtures, helping them decide on what they're going to buy, and then use the products when they're at home. So it's different applications of augmented reality along the whole shopper journey.
Okay, great. Look, let's start with you, Omaid, if we can. Let's just pick up on that, because to a certain extent you're also coming from outside of the industry and looking in. So what do you see as the big trends, I suppose? And let's pick up on VR, AR, urbanization, those kinds of things, and then we're not going to be polite. So that means that if you've got something to contribute, come and grab the microphone. But yeah, let's start with you, Omaid.
Well, so there's an overarching theme happening of the digital and physical worlds merging, and obviously we think that AR is a predominant technology which is driving that. What that enables in shopping and retail, though, are two broad things. Thinking shopper-centric, one is having an entertaining and interesting experience, having the kind of actual shopping experience be delightful in its own right. The second one is about frictionless, and technology enabling you to get to the things you want as quickly as possible. And there are different scenarios happening there, which we're building out with AR. Either kind of making it more enjoyable and fun and interesting, or when you're at the fixture and you're confused, you don't know what you're going to buy, AR enabling you to get to the product you want, and then you get it and you're out as quickly as you want, so frictionless.
Okay, good. Maybe just coming to you, Ben, just in terms of how you see innovation looking at real estate. I mean, it's been a catalyst for change in lots of our lives, so we all are aware of that. But in terms of the retail side, do you see it as a catalyst for change, a disruptor, evolution, revolution, opportunity? How do you see it?
It's a fairly big question, isn't it? So the way I look at innovation, I don't think the technology itself is the innovation. A lot of what we're doing, there's no sudden new thing that Elon Musk has invented that we're using. It's more around how you use the technology to change the business process. So for me, real innovation is someone getting an existing technology and saying, hang on, I can change the way that something's been done for the last 20 years and change it. That's definitely hitting retail. I would say this, but I think the heart of all of it is the data, is really, really understanding the shopper. We're all using it in different ways. I think it's going to be different in 3 or 4 years' time, but in the middle, all of it is understanding and communicating with shoppers. That's the core of all of the innovation that's happening now.
Okay, good. And Andrew, obviously, pick up,
No, it's really interesting to listen to my colleagues on the panel and the points they've made, and I wanted to pick up on something that you said, Omaid, which was talking about the importance of experience and also the expectation that things are frictionless. And coming from a completely different angle, you've identified what consumers are looking for, which is having a great experience, and also this new expectation of convenience and immediate gratification. And if we look at what's happening in the shopping center industry in particular, there's a lot of investments in entertainment, into non-retail activities, and with Dropit, it enables you to be hands-free and capitalize on these things. And this is something that we think is a really important driver of uptake, and combining that with the data element that comes through as well.
I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, Andrew, and if you haven't seen it, if you weren't here yesterday morning, Andrew had launched a new piece of research, which was Retail 2030. There are sort of parts of it in here, so if you haven't got a copy of this, you can pick them up around the corner and you will see kind of some of the key factors in there. But in terms of the innovation side and this big data, you picked up a little bit about that. So what were your views on that in terms of the influence of that on the retail market?
Yeah, and I totally agree with Ben. I think it really is about data. So there is so much data out there that isn't currently being analysed. It's probably a very dangerous thing to say, surrounded by real estate professionals, but the real estate industry generally, the panel excluded obviously, is really completely not ready for the change that's going to come. I think the fact is that lots of real estate companies, including my own, including others, are encumbered by their heritage. So they've always done things in a certain way, and it's very hard to suddenly start doing something new. A company like Dropit comes out of nowhere and can do something immediately from sort of scratch. If a tech company, a big tech company, decided to really engage and attack real estate, would they do it the same way it's been done for the last 30 years? They really wouldn't. It'll all be about the data. Literally, the data will tell you everything. And at the moment, 0.5% of the data is being analysed. It's being collected, it's not being analysed, it's not being interpreted, it's not being used to make decisions. People are still nervous about what the data tells them, and I think that is going to have to change.
And I mean, let's pick that up as well with you, Will, because you're obviously creating a platform that is designed to share data. So picking up Andrew's point, how much of that data is available, how much of it's being shared, and are people seeing an advantage in sharing it to make their business more efficient or more attractive?
Well, of course, what's already been said is that there's a lot of data, and it's not only about consumers, it's also about the building, it's all about the operations that are being done in shopping centers. And of course, this can make everything a lot more efficient and smarter. It's just that currently, of course, all the data is kind of being produced by different platforms, and it's not connected, and people are not sure how to interpret the data because not everyone is a data analyst. And I think that's where the challenges are. I mean, you have to know how to deal with data. You can do predictive analysis on a lot of things. So I think there are big challenges there.
And I mean, I think an interesting point has been raised as well, and I'd like to explore that a bit more, Omaid, in terms of the customer experience. I mean, so Andrew is saying really that if somebody approaches it from a different angle, a non-real estate angle, the result could be very different, or at least I guess the strategy could be very different. I mean, you take the point of view that this should really drive from customer experience. So what do you mean by that, and how is that going to influence, let's take it down to the real estate markets via retail? What's going to be the impact of starting from that point?
Well, I think that one of the things that the availability of smartphones, mobile devices, and those kinds of e-commerce, personalized e-commerce experiences impacts is that people expect to have user-centric experiences. Most of their experiences in their life are. So whether it's in online or whether it's in a physical environment, if it doesn't kind of have that aspect to it, then people will shy away and towards things that are built around them. That's why people don't like push notifications, because they're cack-handed and generally unhelpful. And that's why people do like services at certain points where they actually have a particular need that fulfills their need to overcome a particular barrier. I would say it's quite a big paradigm in I guess most of commercial activity is to be extremely user-centric, and frankly that's where all this discussion about data comes from. For me, data is about insights to fulfill user needs as opposed to anything else, and that's why the likes of Amazon and so on, the big e-commerce players, have done so well. One thing I'll say to put the cat amongst the pigeons is that I think what's really interesting is the Amazon Go experiment in Seattle. Obviously it's in beta now, but just think about the impact of a store where not only do you know what someone bought and it was entirely frictionless and easy, but also you can tell everything that everyone was thinking about and all the products they almost bought and didn't buy and so on. And think about the insights that come from that, in terms of data, which could then be used to optimize the experience.
Yeah, Ben, you wanted to pick that up. Well, Willem, if you pick it up and then pick it up from Ben, and then.
Well, I think it's also important to be a little bit careful about user experiences and user needs, because it's also very easy to say, yeah, it's probably nice for customers to do this and this, and then you just plug in a piece of technology, and some people might like it and see it as a nice gimmick, but it's very important, I think, to really do good research, both qualitative as quantitative, to really understand the latent needs of customers, and then come up with great solutions instead of just plugging a lot of technology and then feel that you really do good and have a great solution for user experience.
Okay, good, Ben.
Just to capitalise on the point there, I totally agree, by the way. I think there's been mistakes made where people see new technology and then they're trying to figure out how to use it, and I put beacons up there as an example. I think the other way around, think of the problem you want to solve and then what's the right technology. But in terms of the conversation about Amazon Go, I had a lovely quote which was someone saying, look at your shopping centre like a 1 million square foot website. Measure everything, understand everything, make the customer experience as slick and as enjoyable as possible. And I think things like Alibaba building shopping centres and Amazon buying Whole Foods, people in this room should watch very carefully, because they know they're going to look at it from a totally different point of view. It's going to be quite interesting.
And just picking up from the point of Omaid as well, in terms of customer experience and enjoyment, that obviously also plays into the marketing, brand awareness, stickiness of brand. Do you think if you start from a customer experience point of view, that's also going to help the kind of work that you're doing in that area, Ben?
Absolutely. So don't do technology for technology's sake. You put the customer in the middle, and then you try and figure out, I think it's always a trade-off. How can you get as much information about what they're doing as possible while still keeping the experience very slick and enjoyable for them? And then also you've got to think, when someone comes to a mall, they shop 4% of the mall. They don't 96% of it they don't care about. You've got to try and focus their attention easily and quickly on that 4%.
In terms of when you looked at it and you looked at what might be the case in 2030, were there kind of innovations, applications, technology that you thought, okay, there's a lot of noise about it at the moment, but actually, do we think it's going to happen? Do we believe people will wear, virtual reality headsets for Omaid, for example? I mean, were there things that you thought, I just don't buy that?
I think perhaps the other way around is that more things will happen by 2030 than we expect. I think technology will develop to an extent where virtual augmented reality doesn't require a headset. It just requires you to wear normal glasses, contact lenses, whatever else. But I think very much to Ben's point, technology or whatever we deliver should be an enabler, not a barrier. A lot of people do still want to go to a store, find something, pay for it and walk out for lots of products. So having an incredible experience around a relatively basic shopping mission isn't really required. I think, again, to one of Ben's points, a lot of good points, Ben, about predictive analytics, the fact that data will be allowing retailers and brands to understand what we want or what we need before we need it ourselves. So a lot of the mundane shopping, washing tablets, toilet rolls, bottled water, wine, etc., you don't need to do it. It'll be done for you. So we'll have a lot more time to spend shopping and engaging with things we want to do. Then that'll be the big change. So I don't think anything's off the table for 2030. I think it'll just be how it's delivered. It'll be very different than today.
Yeah, just picking up on that, I think it's great points, and I like that people are talking about the practicalities of technology and ensuring there's a great user experience. And it's very interesting to talk about the dirty word here of Amazon and what's happening as other people start to move into physical retail. Looking at this industry from the perspective of a technology company, there's a lot of what I would call kind of low-hanging fruit that we can take advantage of already if we adopt a somewhat more collaborative approach of working together as technology companies, as retailers, as property owners. You know, to go back to our example at Dropit, which I'm most familiar with, we can eliminate a lot of pain points in the transaction process. We can make it easier for people to take up more of the shopping experience in the mall, and then create that data chain that, you know, feeds into the analytics and the understanding that all of us are looking to get. And, you know, with what you're doing as well in bringing sites together as a community, because that's what people want to experience, and they want that ease and experience and familiarity they're getting from the online.
Quite interesting as well, that one of the things, so we'd had a session here yesterday which was looking at consumer, retail and investment trends and picking up on that. And one of the things that came out of that was actually an important thing for next year will be security, in terms of people feeling secure, because there was analysis done on the amount of online shopping that started in Nice after the terrorist incident here. So do you think that also helps create that sense of community and will help aspects of that to make people feel more safe, whether that's against being robbed in the shopping centre or whether or not it's that kind of thing? How important do you think that sort of trend will be, Willem?
Well, I think it sums up with other reasons to be a community, but of course the objective of a shopping centre with the retailers is of course to be a very attractive and consumer-friendly place. And of course security is becoming a much bigger and important and impactful thing, especially with all the things that are going on. And of course we're kind of in this topic, and also if we talk to a lot of security companies, the stuff that's being done currently, and I didn't know a lot about it before, but I think it's getting more and more active. And I also heard from, like, for example, Westfield, that it's already on the list of targeted places and stuff. So there's definitely a lot that needs to be done on this matter.
One of the things that also came out of yesterday was a discussion about, I guess, attractiveness of the centres and also attractiveness of the shops, and so that then pure play online was more likely to die than retail, in a sense, because people wanted brand ambassadors. They wanted to be able to display what they'd got and create a brand, and a physical store was therefore an important part of that. Maybe just for you, Andrew, on this, how do you see that developing? And does that mean, because one of the items I want to discuss really is a concrete example of it, is what does it mean for the way that real estate investors earn their money? Because if they can't earn it from the money that is spent in a store, how do they earn it?
So I totally agree that pure play retail is dead. I think we won't see any more pure play online only big brands. We'll still see niche brands. So if you're selling spare parts of washing machines, you may well only ever have an online website. If you're an online retailer selling a breadth of brands, you absolutely need a store. most customers, 90% of customers, still want to go to a store and have a physical experience. If you're online, you can't offer that. So I think for brands that are coming into the physical world, we'll see a lot more stores that are absolutely designed as showrooms and brand ambassadors and don't aim to actually sell anything from that store. So you've already seen it with Samsung in the States. We'll see it increasingly globally that stores will become, I guess, sales rooms as opposed to sort of stock rooms rather. So you'll be able to go in there, order the product, arrange it to be collected, delivered the same day, next day, whatever, but not actually have to take it away there and then. So for investors, it's looking at how that store is valued by the occupier as a marketing vehicle, and you set the rent accordingly. But obviously you don't have any turnover base, and turnover-based rent is something that is a misnomer anyway, really. Where does click and collect go? Where do returns get allocated? What about online sales within a catchment area of that store? So nobody really defines it properly. It's in the brand's interest to minimize their sales. It's in the landlord's interest to maximize their sales. So just having the physical entity as something you can rent from a marketing proposition makes far more sense for the next sort of 5-10 years.
Okay, yeah, Ben, go ahead.
I think that's very interesting. So one of our clients is a big outlet mall, which has a huge capacity to bring people into new luxury brands, let's say. And we did some work for them looking at the flow from online to offline. So the data's already there. We basically say for Cath Kidston, you mash up their online consumer database with the offline, and you just figure out what's happening. So in terms of measuring turnover in an omni-channel world, you can absolutely do it already today. You just got to get the two data sets combined, and then you really can have turnover-based rent, because you're measuring the value of the customer, not of the transaction in the store, but of the customer, and then where they spend the money doesn't really matter.
Okay, good, yeah.
Listen, I think you absolutely can measure it. I just don't think occupiers want to share it with landlords. So the ability to measure it is absolutely no doubt, but the desire they have to share with the landlord that information is very much in doubt.
And
a quick provocation. So just quick provocation. From my experience dealing with big brands and so on and retailers, is the e-commerce functionality and operation is set up as a separate P&L to the physical stores. So what you're describing requires significant organizational shifts, and I find that there are barriers to implementation based on that, quite significant. The other one is to do with the extent of what you're saying to be true. So obviously physical people are going to want to feel and touch physical things when they're buying them. It's kind of natural. But there's a growth in technology of virtual try-ons, being able to use tech to try things, clothes, furniture, jewelry, all kinds of things. So as people become more comfortable with that, that's another pressure point where some segments are going to be happy to do that, as far as going to even to cars. Whereas obviously there'll always be some who want to touch and feel the product.
I'm really glad to hear this impassioned defense, and I guess expected, of physical retail. And I think everybody's right in understanding the preference that people have to see and try before they buy. When you buy online, in some cases you have a return rate of 40%. And certainly what we hear from our dialogue with retailers, being a company that as part of our business focuses on fulfillment, is there is a lack of integration between online stock and offline stock. And aside from being suboptimal from a consumer perspective, this is also suboptimal from a profitability perspective. So I'm sure over the next 10 years or 5 years or 20 years, the industry is going to go in this direction. But in the meantime, the more we can do to facilitate the closing of that sale in store where the customer prefers to buy and where the retailer prefers to sell, I think the better for everybody.
And one of the things that's interested me for a while now is that you have, as far as I can see anyway, you've got almost like a back to the future approach, which is rather like yours, Aaron, in a way, which is in Victorian times and Edwardian times, people went to very nice shops, and of course they didn't take their shopping home with them. They had their servants do it, or the stores sent it to them. So they did kind of what you're doing now for people.
On Bond Street, I mean, even today, I have a friend who shall remain nameless, and when his significant other goes shopping, there's a black cab that follows her down along the street and delivers a hands-free shopping solution. And this is a brilliant convenience, of course, for this family, but something that we think is relevant for everybody's expectation now, and tried to find a way to make it affordable for every pocket.
You're not talking about Ben's wife, are you? That's not a...
No, well, maybe we're talking about the same person.
Good. And the other part of it, though, which I think was picked up in yours, Andrew, in a way, is the more kind of revolutionary aspect of it, I suppose, which is artificial intelligence, predictive, that kind of side of things. I did a session in Prague 2 weeks ago where we had the guys from Google and Amazon both talking about just how rapidly that technology is moving in terms of what they can do using robots and artificial intelligence. Does anybody have a view on the impact of those things, what that means either for the community sense or maybe staffing or the customer experience? Anybody can take a view on that?
So a very challenging discussion to have is that in the next 15 years, probably half of the roles in retail won't need a human to do them anymore. So technology already exists that can do a huge amount, whether it's as simple as touchscreen ordering, or it's manufacturing back of house, or it's serving a customer in store. Do you really think in 10 years' time there'll be checkouts in supermarkets anymore? Why on earth would there be? And that's hundreds of thousands of people. I'm not saying it's right, but that is absolutely going to happen. So the technology already exists. It's about customers accepting it and allowing it to happen. So the artificial intelligence, the management of data will allow retailers to have much more visibility of where stock is. So to your point about where stock sits, it doesn't need to sit online or offline. The stock is just there, and the stock is available for access to whoever needs the stock. So I think we'll see a lot more of that, which will drive retailers' profitability, because it won't need to have stock everywhere in the wrong place. It'll be in the right place because it knows where to be.
And do we think things like, we're obviously going to have driverless cars coming sooner rather than later, 3D printing of products? I mean, for example, already if you're if you're buying a book on Amazon and you're buying it here in France, depending on the pricing structure, it may simply be printed in France and delivered to you, that it's not a stock sitting somewhere, it's just printed. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, of course, we're all very IT focused and there's a lot of innovation coming from that side, but I think also in the near future, and it's hard to predict, but that there's definitely also a lot of innovation coming from chemistry and new materials that make stuff possible that we can't really think of now. I saw a presentation earlier on about an architect that uses, or that made a building where walls could actually move and change to the likings of the people that were living there. So I think, especially also from that side, we can expect a lot of impactful things happening over the next years.
And from a real estate perspective, Andrew, do you think driverless cars are going to make a difference because suddenly car parks won't be necessary in the same way, or what's your thought?
Totally. And I think the challenge of driverless cars will be for legislation to catch up with technology. So driverless cars exist, they work. They've been trialled now, so within 5 years' time, we could all have a driverless car. It'll just be that governments and local authorities aren't necessarily ready for them. So it'll be cities that we might not expect, like Dubai, places in Abu Dhabi, that will just legislate it's all driverless now. So if you have driverless and humans driving, it's a recipe for a few accidents. If it's all driverless and autonomous, so it's 95% of accidents caused by people. Cars are stationary 95% of the time. So why do we need our money tied up in this asset that depreciates hour by hour? So shopping centres absolutely will need fewer car parks. They will require, like airports, drop-off and pick-up points, as opposed to traditional car parking. And that'll mean a requirement for less space, or that space to be utilised in a different way.
And Ben, do you want to pick that?
To go on an absolute tangent, but you mentioned AI earlier and sort of developments in intelligence from computers. So one thing is computers doing manual jobs that we can't do. I think, as you mentioned earlier, that another way I see it impacting business is understanding the data. So up to now, we've had systems that create a report, and a human being has to look at it and make a decision based on that report. I think a great use of AI is to take the human out of the equation. They can analyze the data and they can do actions themselves, and that's already happening on marketing side, and it's going to move into the rest of the business, sadly.
So that is quite a big change, really.
I think so. I think like we said before, all this data has been collected and never used. the right answer to that is just take people out of the equation. The computers can analyze it themselves and take decisions themselves. Slightly scary.
There's a great example of that in the States. There's a relatively large company that has an AI system as one of its board members that has the same voting rights as the other board members. So the latest chip in the latest driverless car can do 412 trillion calculations a second. If we started now and all did it for the next 100 years, we'd never get that close. So 412 trillion calculations a second, decisions that they're making, yes or no decisions. We just can't compete with that. It's great. It's a good thing. I'm not scared. I'm too old to be worried, so it's fine.
Good. Omaid, I wanted to pick up with you because you're looking at some of these trends particularly. Is there, in terms of mobile data, do you think the genie will never go back in the box, or do you think there will be, at a given point, somebody will start going, actually, do you know what? I've had enough of Facebook, I've had enough of sharing, I'm just going to turn off all of this and just walk around without being tracked everywhere I go. Do you think we'll have a rebalance?
So what I think, obviously it's trendy now to kind of opt out, whatever. I do think that's a kind of really minority sport because frankly you miss out if you're not in the game of those things. What I do think is going to happen is that in the not too distant future, people like individuals are going to get a much bigger sense of the value of the data they produce. And they're starting to have an emergence of services where individuals start to own their own data and then decide which third parties that they share them with. And this is a kind of massive cultural realization of the big services. The free service in exchange for personal data is the paradigm of lots and lots of new, massive, growing e-commerce, digital businesses. And the cultural shift will happen where people value it differently rather than just give it away for free email.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point and one that I wanted to pick up on. And it's so crucial that in exchange for your data, you get a proposition that has value. I think all of us probably have spam inbox folders full of different programs with offers for stores we'll never go to again or things that we'll never buy. And the vision that we have for Dropit is that as we build a global community and people shop in different sites all over the world, the understanding that's generated from that will be able to deliver relevant and targeted marketing. So if I get off the plane in Dubai coming from London and I have some free time to kill, I would know that if I go to a mall there's a certain offer waiting for me based on my previous shopping behavior. And I think when you incorporate things which are really specific and relevant into the consumer equation, people are happy to share information because they know that you understand them when they're coming back and marketing to you.
One thing also I just wanted to pick up, and maybe let's start with you, Ben, on that. Looking at this, is there a big difference between the generations? Omaid said earlier that actually all generations are using smartphones now. Are you seeing differences in the generations in terms of whether that's millennials, X, Y, Z, who's doing what and why?
So there's obviously differences in technology penetration, but we tend to try not to segment on generations X, Ys and Zs, and we like to segment based on shopping behavior. So what do people actually like to do, and their age often isn't the right indicator for that, and what they're going to enjoy receiving, it's not driven by age. So I think there's a bit of an over-obsession on millennials and focusing on how they're behaving. It's interesting, but there's a lot of other people that aren't millennials that are shopping, and we're trying to look at more behavioral segmentation and not so much age. And I think there's things, I agree with the point earlier about technology. If it makes life easier, people will adopt it. As an anecdote, I was in a pub in Shoreditch with my dad, who's 76 and he has a smartphone but doesn't love it. And we tried out an app where you can order beers from the table on the app. This is a gimmick, this is never going to work. And he loved it because the guy brings the beer to the table, no money changes hands, it's all done in the back end, and that's technology changing a pain point. And so the generation wasn't important. My dad now loves this thing, and if he could find a pub that had that, he'd go there every day.
Is that because your credit card is attached to the app?
It does help that I'm paying for the beers, yeah.
I can see why he loves it. I look forward to that stage myself. Good.
So, it's so true. We see this on the data that we have at Blippar that there's very little variation in engagement rates based on classic demographic segmentation. We'll have campaigns targeted at 65-year-olds that engage at enormous rates because they want the value proposition of what's being offered, so they go and get it, and having a smartphone is not the barrier. We actually published a study called Generation Curious about this, so look it up.
One kind of final thing from my side is, because we're trying to do an outlook for 2018 as well as to 2030, and looking at innovation as a key part of that, maybe just you can all agree or have different ones. I don't mind how it works out. But what do you think is the key trend? And if it's a revolution or an evolution, if you think it's a revolution, who's going to face the guillotine? Ben?
Are you sure? So, closing comments. I think it's an evolution. I think that most of the technology we're looking at is not new. It's just being used in a better and better way. And I think in the very short term, what we've seen is, and I would say this again, but the customer data is becoming a hygiene factor. It used to be like, CRM is innovation. It's not innovation. You have to have it, full stop, and then it's how you use it that's important. And I think one thing we're seeing, which is surprising me how quickly it's happening, is getting rid of tills. So look at Nike, look at some of these stores that they don't have two businesses doing on and offline. It's one, it's all tied up. The payment happens on the shop floor, not at the till. And I think that's going to happen a lot quicker than we think.
Yeah, I totally agree with all those points. I think the biggest change for me would be, I guess, recognition and awareness of the industry, that these changes are coming so quickly. And I think businesses, if they do anything in the next year, is to sort of start with a piece of paper and say, okay, if I was starting today, what would I be doing? Don't think about what currently exists. I know it's nearly impossible, but if you were starting today, if somebody else is going to come and compete in your space, what would they do? And then look at the parts of the business that aren't fit for purpose and invest in those as opposed to investing in gimmick technology that isn't relevant.
Okay, good, Aaron.
Yeah, excellent point. And things are going to continue evolving until the point that we look back and realize that it's been a revolution that we were kind of in the midst of the whole time. Something that I'm really fascinated by is that just over the course of this year, we detect a change in the way that property owners and retailers are already starting to think about technology, and it's something that we really welcome. And I think it's important to emphasize that with relatively small investments, you can deliver a whole host of benefits to your site. So, we see people who spend millions and millions and millions of dollars a year on Christmas campaigns and all sorts of traditional advertising streams which aren't particularly measurable. Now is really the time, and sorry to be cheesy and come back to talking about a community, but to come back together as retailers, as property owners, as technology companies, and as consumers to invest in the right kind of things that are going to deliver the experiences and help everybody evolve to what's expected by the marketplace.
Great, Willem.
Maybe also a little bit from my perspective. I think that with all these challenges that retail and property owners are facing, there needs to be a lot more collaboration, and it's just going to be more intense to work together and come up with great solutions for consumers and create an overall experience instead of having all these separate solutions. I think connecting data, connecting solutions, making one overall proposition, that's going to be a big thing.
Great, Omaid.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to say a technology one. I think that the technology that I work in, augmented reality, is tipping into the mainstream now, and it's not driven by us, even though we've been commercializing it for 6 years. It's driven by the developments from Apple and Google to include AR technology in the base operating system of most smartphones, such that by the end of this year there'll be 650 million smartphones around the world with AR technology built in and ready to go. And we see that as enabling a huge amount of applications, and augmented retail is the one that we think is going to be the one that tips over, i.e. the use of AR of people navigating shopping centres, into stores, around stores, and buying products.